Hi. So, welcome back to my office. Um, I guess this is episode 12, and there's 13 episodes to each season. So, um, next week will be my season finale, and I've got something really cool planned. Um, some really cool people we get to talk to, and all that kind of stuff. Um, so, last time you came by, you saw this section of my wall. It's got a lot of cool things. When I finished the Madness Wars, when I finished Plight of the Madness Wars, my wife made me a mandala, and it is a dragon's eye. And as you go out, you can start to see some really cool things. You saw that picture. The very center is a unicorn's horn. If you're staring from the top down, so it kind of spirals, it's a unicorn's horn. Then we've got some blades coming off of that. Off of that, we have dragon scales going all the way around. Then we've got a ring of fangs going all the way around that, and points of blades coming off of that. Between the points of blades, we have spurts of dragon fire. Then we've got the yellow of the dragon's eyes, and if you look in the corners, you can see the veins of the dragon's eyes. And then the entire outside is black scales. So she did that piece. It's called Window of the Monarch, and we spent way too much money getting it framed, but it was well worth it. The frame had to be specially handmade, and the matting, and we got a little little brass plate for it with the name on it, and Becca's name as the artist. Above that, we have another piece. I believe it's called The Lost King, and it was done by a woman named Kathleen Farrell. She's a artist out of Rochester, New York. She's a professor, and I got to hang out with her one time when I went up to Rochester. She's very cool, very, very amazing woman. And she just gave it to me. She just gave me the piece. And I was so blown away. It was amazing. I have two lions after that. They're about this big, plaster casts of two different lions. Two very different lions around the same size. Those represent my two sons. And one of these days, when I take them down or I pass away, they will be given to my sons. I know which one is Tobin and I know which one is Race. So after that, you saw this very cool oval frame, black, very decorative. On the inside was a mirror and a black skull. That looks way fancier than it is. The mirror is actually like foil. The frame is very plastic. It's very, very cheap. I think I got it for like $1.50 at the Target bargain bin on Halloween. Now, don't tell anybody because it's very impressive looking. So don't tell everybody that it's really cheap, because that would be messed up if you did that. There were a couple of words posted around it. Awkward, publish, ugly, and was is up there. They frame a plaster cast of Horus and Ankh and the symbol of Osiris. After that, you have a bat skeleton. The reason for the bat skeleton is I found it somewhere. I want to say it was like Party City or something during Halloween, and I kept it because in the Manhunter series there is a charm that they all wear. It's a totem that they all wear that allows them to communicate wherever they are and teleport to each other. And it's got the skull of a bat on it. And on the cover of the and the cover of a book is the skeleton of a bat. There's a couple of ninja stars after that. That was from friends of mine from the dojo. His name is Tiger. He gave them to me for my 39th birthday. And that's really cool. Next is a bear claw. The bear claw is a gift that was given me as a trophy for having finished the book Eastgate. Eastgate was my first epic length novel. It's like 800 pages. Hasn't been released yet. Won't be released for a number of years. But it was like 800 pages, and it was given to me by a friend in my autobiography called Heart. It was like from a bear that her uncle killed, and it was given to me because she wanted me to have it as a trophy. She thought that I had accomplished something amazing, and she wanted me to celebrate through that. And that's what you saw. You saw the frame around my window. Now, there's two roses that were also in the picture. One rose is the symbol for the character Sob from the book Chaste and Mestelvin. She's a major character, and I associate that rose with her. The other is a blue rose, which is associated with a character named Gentry Azure Rose in the book Leafdom. And then you came right up the middle here, and you started seeing badges, like lanyards with with like author marks on them, and those are from the different cons that I've been to. And the one that's really cool is the one that says ArtCon. It was February 8th, 2020, right before COVID hit and started messing everything up. ArtCon was a very big con for me. It's a very small town called Neosho. And it's a small town in Missouri, but it happens to be located between three big towns. The con was only 7 hours long. And it was, it's just in a very small room. There were a number of different speakers there. Everything you expect from a con. And during that con, I sold 76 books. It was absolutely ridiculous. It's totally crazy. I was selling books like crazy. We have a card reader, so we can take credit cards. And we were just, selling like crazy. I'm not real great in public, so I was really nervous and totally jittered the whole time. I was drinking coffee, having panic attacks. My wife just kept looking at me going, "You're gonna be okay. Breathe. I try to buy something from the vendors, some vendor every time I go. That was the day that I got, oh, honey, could you grab the Scooby-Doo glass and the,
yeah.
and the other guy, Hellboy. I also got these 4 magnets, very high quality magnets. One's got Harlequin on it. One's got Sherlock, Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock. And then there's 2 characters from the show Archer. I also bought these. This is art from Scooby-Doo. I got that. And then I got this, which is our boy Hellboy. Now, I got these from an artist that comes to these cons that is becoming quite a friend. His business is called Hey This Guy Does Art. And I also commissioned him to give me 2 more glasses. One, well, as soon as, are they there?
I don't know. I got
They're
one
not.
of them.
Okay, one of them is
Let's see if the other one's in.
Maggie and the baby with the one eyebrow. And she's gonna bring me the other one. She's gonna look for the other one. She might be able to find it. She might not. It's these are my fancy whiskey glasses. Yeah, here it is. This is a character from Hellboy, Ben Sapien. So these are my fancy whiskey glasses. When my guests come over and I serve them $high scotch, they have to drink it out of this. Anyway, hey, this guy does art. Of course, I'm gonna link Kathleen. I'm gonna link that stuff. You check these guys out. He does commission pieces. He can do just about anything you ask for. He's a really cool guy. Very fun. Very professional. He's doing some amazing things. And Kathleen, oh, man, you should try to friend her on Facebook or something, because just some of the stuff that she posts is just amazing. I mean, her work is very quirky and very cool. It's very cool stuff. So look for Kathleen Farrell. Okay. My desk. I'm gonna show you a picture of my desk right now. I'm gonna count the glasses as one of the things that I show you from the desk today. I'm also gonna show you this. This is a stainless steel keg glass, and today it has Dr. Pepper in it. It is it's got a little bit of a story. I had my first barbarian drinking goat party. Long story, but I ended up writing a song that's kind of backstory for my world. It's a drinking song that shows up a couple of times in my story, in my books. I ended up writing it because my wife tricked me. It's 65 verses long, and it's a drinking song. So after each chorus, you're supposed to take a drink. So we had a party, and we invited everybody, and we told them to bring their own mugs and glasses. So my boy D was coming from Arkansas, and about halfway here he remembered that he had to have a mug. So he went out and he bought this at a gas station between here and there, and he used it. Didn't want to take it home, so he gave it to me, but I saved it for him for the next goat party. So this is D's official barbarian goat drinking song mug, because you might not know this, but when you go to a barbarian goat drinking song party, you have to bring your own mug. So that's this. While we're talking about mugs, I'm gonna try to get my wife off of her, but again, the horn might be back there.
Well, the horn's in the wet bar.
Oh, the horn's in the wet bar. Okay.
All the goat stuff is in the wet bar.
All the goat stuff's in the wet bar. Well, usually this is on my desk.
You want the horn?
Grab the horn. Usually this is on my desk. A friend of mine, who in my autobiography I refer to as Bell, he got it for me for Christmas, not last year but the year before, and it is really awesome. He was gonna order me the small one, and decided it was too small, so he went one up, and it ended up being massive. It's made out of an ox horn. And for this year's goat party, I used it. It was I guess it was last year's goat party. It was during COVID, so we couldn't have a big party. So what we did was we put Tobin's electric drum set in the corner. I pulled out my bass. We gave the goat bell, which you're supposed to ring between each course to tell everybody you're supposed to drink. We gave the goat bell to Rafe, and Becca used a tambourine, and we had the lyrics set up on the 2 screens, and we just went crazy. That's what I used for last year's party, and I plan on using it again this year. I'm hoping to have the goat party in July this year. I'm hoping that all the vaccines have been done, and I can invite people to my house. If I get a lot of people that are interested, we're going to even rent out a room at a hotel and have a stage and all that kind of stuff. We've all been preparing for it. Rafe he plays the French horn, and he's actually written a French horn part for the song, and we practice it every now and then. But he's got a French horn part for the song, and it sounds amazing. There are times in the song where, during the bridges, where I hit a note and then go all the way up, a number of octaves to the 12th fret, and as she's singing the bridges, because Becca solos the bridges, so I go up like that, and then I do that 12 times, because it's 12 verse and 12 lines to that bridge. Well, he wrote a part that starts high and goes all the way down. So we'll actually be crossing over each other when we do the bridges, because of the very cool part that Rafe wrote for the song. Anyway, I'm really excited about it. As we get closer to time, of course, I'm going to talk about it, and we'll be hearing more and more about that. So those are the items from my desk. I know it shouldn't really count because a lot of the glasses were off the desk, but I got to talking about glasses, so why not, right? Okay. We have a very cool episode for you today. In 7 days, 7 days, if you count today, in 7 days, the final book of the Madness Wars is coming out. It's called Fate of Madness. And the Madness Wars was a lot of work. Not only to write, but I had to have 4 epic length novels and a companion novel edited. So in 2 years, 6 months. So my editor had to work really fast and really hard. He had to meet almost impossible deadlines, and he had to. He just had to do more than he should have. But he's really committed to my work. So he was willing to do all the work because he didn't want me to have to find another editor. He's very excited to be working with me. I'm very excited to be working with him. Well, he happens to be a writer too. And around the same time, he has a book coming out called Halcyon's Wake Love. And the last one is called Halcyon's Wake Fate. That's correct, right? I'm getting those right? Faith. But I'm getting those right? Okay. Faith was the first one. Love is the second one. And they're like nothing I've ever read before. I mean, it's just insane what we're reading, what we're getting from this guy. So I'm going to have him on. We're going to talk to him. He's right here. And we're going to have an entire conversation with him. Very excited to have him. And we're going to see what happens. Okay. So I'm gonna find the piece because she's actually mentioned in my autobiography. I'm gonna find his piece, and I'm gonna read you the chapter that's based off of him, and then we'll have him on. Okay, and then I will go over an update for the Gondik Iron Spine Bramble section of my life, and it's been an interesting week on that front. So let me get this, let me read this, let me bring this guy on the show, and then we'll talk about all that. Okay, so I found the reading. It was no easy task, I'm telling you. I had to open Word and then open the document, and then I had to type the name of the title into the search. It was a nightmare. Anyway, my wife is also in the room still. You can tell because of her lightning. She's going to be working on a mandala. If she finishes it in time, I'll flash it on here right now. So if you saw it, then she finished it in time. If not, you just saw me being an idiot. No pressure, baby. Okay. So I would like to announce that I am being a responsible citizen on my channel here today. And this is just Dr. Pepper. There are other people in my office who are not being as responsible. I made her I wanted to make her a drink that I call the Devil's Root, which is half Fireball and half root beer. It's very sweet. It's not overpowering. You can still taste alcohol in it. It's not overpowering. She loved it. I made one for her for the first time the other night. She went crazy. It's a very good drink. I wanted to make her that, but we're out of root beer because we've got these two little monsters are running around my house that think they get to drink all my soda. That's not fair. They're actually kind of big monsters. Anyway, they want to drink all my soda. So we had Dr. Pepper. So we're going to call it the Devil's Pepper, which can easily be mispronounced. Okay. She liked that one. She liked that one. Okay. So this is the guy that we're going to see today. And he's going to come on as soon as I finish reading this. He's a very cool guy. Okay. The Gunslinger. The Gunslinger has a mind of maybes. He can walk the world of man with confidence and poise. He can talk to anyone with his down-to-earth personality and his swagger. He's impressive without trying to be, and you can't help but have a fun time when he is around. But as much of an everyman as he might seem, he is also a fellow traveler in the wild and the mystic. His mind is open to theories and myths that others would dismiss. He sees the possible beastman lurking in the woods, looks to the heavens for crafts and strange moving lights, and he opens his mind to plots and schemes some might think insane. The Gunslinger walks along artist stride for stride, but he is a terrible mind to wrestle with, both unbreakable ally and skeptic at once, a role that not many could play. Let's look at how I found him, and a glimpse of and the glimpse I saw into his madness. Let's see what he became to me, and how without him, my rise would have faltered. I entered a very intense contest created by Mark Lawrence called Spiffbo. Okay, that's what we call it. We even try to pronounce it and use it in a sentence. It's not a real word, but indie authors around the world try to work it into the conversation. What this contest is actually called is Self-Published Fantasy Blog Off. Hold on. Jordan has an itch. Can you hear the chimes in the back? Okay. Leave that alone. All right. Self-Published Fantasy Blog Off. It was designed by Mark to display talented writers to the world of the traditionally published and the world at large. 300 novels are submitted every year. 10 review blogs are chosen to judge, and the books are divided up to them randomly. Every review blog gets 30 books, and they are told to narrow that number down however they see fit. This replicates the submission process to agents and publishers and puts us all in 10 slush piles. Only one book can rise from the chosen 30, and only those 10 are read by every blog. 3 champions rise, and the publicity they receive from standing above in Mark's contest can make a career. So many great writers have come to this contest. A few have gained traditionally published contracts. Even more have been tossed into obscurity. The system is not flawed, but the judges can use any criteria they wish to choose their finalists. As far as I know, no judge has written the names on the wall and thrown a dart, but if they did, it would not be against the rules. They use the same techniques in their selection as any agent or publisher. So if a book comes to them that they are not in the mood to read, they can just toss it. If they choose to read 10% of every book, then they can do that too. However they want to rate the book or shuffle the book is viable. So a great book always rises, but many great books fall away. The Gunslinger and I entered one year. The contest is a great way to network with other writers. We all talk and friendships are kindled. This is a group I found The Alchemist in when I opened it to interviews. This is where I found the cannibal and the judge. This land of plenty and none is the place where the panda and I first met, as he was a great supporter and boon to Spiffbo. All of my great self-published writer friends have found me through this gate. That's not true, not all. There is the druid. I met her another place, but she does have a lot to do with Spiffbo, especially at this particular time. I woke deep into the afternoon, shook off my haze, and found a few messages in the box from the Gunslinger. See, he was right up the road from me in a small town in Missouri. He had dropped his book into the pot, and when the socializing began, he found my Facebook page. He saw my Harley Davidson. He saw a few pics of me with a beer, and he decided I might be a guy he wanted to know. We vowed to meet up, and I decided to read his book so we might have something to talk about. I picked up Halcyon's Wake, Faith, by the Gunslinger. I read it in one night and wrote a review for it. This is what I wrote. I've never had this much fun with a book before. Halcyon's Wake is insane. Okay, so have you ever been drinking and things get out of hand? You're telling a story and some guy across from you starts telling a story that one-ups yours, so you tell another even crazier story. Then the same jerk hits you again with a better one. I'm pretty sure that the Gunslinger was having both of those conversations with himself. Halcyon's Wake starts almost reasonable. Asteroid comes screaming towards Earth. Our planet can't just dodge it, so there's a modest evacuation. We're on our way. He has a technically sound knowledge of how modern space shuttles work, so you can settle into the comfortable stride, and you're moving along just fine. Then he hits you. Are you going to let me get away with this? The Gunslinger asks his reader. He gives you a curveball that has you slowly nodding your head. Sure, you say. Let's keep going. A few chapters later, he introduces a new idea. It gives you pause. You stop, look around to see if the room is with you or not, because this idea is kind of out there. It takes a leap to follow, but you are nodding and you keep reading. Are you going to let me get away with this? Now you're moving downhill. You're at a pretty hefty trot. Things are starting to get a little treacherous. You're in unsafe land now, running too fast, a bit out of breath. You're in this far, so why go back now? Double dog dare you to follow me here, he says. At this point, the idea is so intense, so mind-blowing that you can't not go along. You can only nod and keep running. One dare after the next, he gives us. What do you think of this? This okay? Are you still comfortable? The Gunslinger asks. No, you're not comfortable. Things are moving fast now. Ideas are coming at you that are out of your control. You're moving so fast that you can't catch your breath. You get more and more concepts thrown at you, and more outright brilliant, outright crazy ideas. You're starting to realize now that your author might not all be there. You're starting to see that he has no filter. He will take you to places that you're not ready for, give you visions you could never prepare yourself to see. The book is hot now, running out of control, and all you can do is hold on, white-knuckled, the wind screaming in your ears, your cheeks flapping as she drags you along into the wildest read you have ever had. There are things in this book you're not ready for. Every now and then you will look at it wondering if the writer is seriously taking you there, wondering if you can suspend disbelief long enough to finish the book. Do it. Don't let this one get away. Halcyon is not an experience you want to go without. When you're done, go out and buy a bag of peanut M&Ms. You've earned them. The Gunslinger read that review and went nuts. I'm pretty sure that to this day, it's the greatest way anyone has ever captured his work. Because when you read Halcyon's Wake, you realize this guy is just a little left of center. He also happens to be one of the most powerful grasps I have ever seen on the written language. He knows story. Knows what works and what doesn't. He's an editor. He's edited the Sloth's book, and the Sloth gave him high praise and used him for the rest of the trilogy. I stuck to a very strict release schedule of every April 15th and October 5th. April 15th to honor the short story Mr. Olson gave me in 5th grade, and October 5th in honor of Miss Haig's assignment my freshman year of high school. So when the editor who was working on the Manhunter series went in for heart surgery and had to set the book down, I reached out to the Gunslinger, and he scooped up the 3rd book in the series to whittle at it a bit. He read the first 2 and delivered a powerful product I was very happy with on the 3rd. I sent it to my 2nd editor, who gave it glowing praise for its cleanliness. Then I roped the Gunslinger in for the lot. He liked my style, asked why I was not big yet, and he agreed to work with me into the future we could not see the end of. My next release was Legends of the Exiles, and here we hit a bit of a bump. Well, he had moved to Arizona and was looking at Exiles through the glass of the Manhunters. He said it didn't fit, and he was cutting it pretty deep. Said the dialogue was juvenile, and the world did not seem that well developed. He told me he'd worked on it for X number of hours, and he was only 23 pages in. He had been into his canteen that night and found not water there, but whiskey. And he's prone to exaggeration when this happens. Becca flew into action when I got off the phone with him. She emailed and messaged the Gunslinger and breathed fire for a while, and the next day he woke up to his desk smoldering and patted out the flames. He had been told by Becca the dialogue was supposed to be juvenile because those that were talking were children. He had been told the world was in fact very detailed, and she told him that if he was not going to blah blah blah, then she was going to blah blah. She growled at him a bit, quite a bit, and he stepped into the book with a greater respect and a healthy fear of Becca. The section of the world that he is talking about, he had no way of knowing, but I had written 7 epic series about that particular culture, and this was a collection of novellas that I wrote afterwards, so there was so much world building there, but he had just read the first 23 pages, and he had no way of knowing that. She growled at him quite a bit, and he stepped into the book with a greater respect and a healthy fear of Becca. He's still afraid of Becca. She has become his editor. She edited his 2nd book, Love. And that's also why he fears Becca. I'm going to see if I can get him to come to my, and we're going to talk about it in a couple minutes here. I'm going to get him to see if I can get him to come to my house for like a couple scotches and just to hang out and party on April 15th, the day of the release of the last book of the Madness Wars. He might not be able to do it. He does live in Missouri again. He might not be able to do it, but if he does, I know that he will not sit with his back to Becca because he does still fear her. He texted me asking me to call him a few days later. He'd been working on the book and he needed to speak to me. I called, and when he answered the phone, he sighed. He did not say howdy, hello, heya, but he spoke with a soft, reverent voice, and he said, "She did not dance to their rules. Music was not for prancing around in circles with hands up and smiling. It's not about bowing and presenting intention. Dancing was about sweat and exertion. It was about freedom and power. It was a thing for gods and goddesses. The closest men and women ever got to divinity. While all of the others danced in circles, she spun, slid through the groupings. She flipped her hair and moved her hips. She let the sway of her body and the moving of her arms speak to her power, and she loosed her war cry every time the music lifted her to heights unimaginable. This is a scene from the book. This is young Rachel B. Scow on the floor in a hall where her people are set for a feast. In his voice, I heard his love of the young girl. In his voice, I heard a true believer. What do you think? I said. You have me for life. I'll edit every book you write from this day forth. I want in. I want it all. I want Paralesque. I want the mountain. I want to be part of what you're making. Don't cut me out. Money, deadlines, we can work all that out. I can be flexible. I'm a hard worker. I'm with you. This is mine too. And ever since, he has been. I have the gunslinger beside me, fighting back all my doubts, fighting back all my flaws, as he shoots from the hip and screams wild to the air. With a canteen of whiskey and the love of my world, the gunslinger fights for my team. He's my editor. He's my scribe. He's also my friend. So, that is what I wrote in my autobiography about the gunslinger. And now you guys get to meet him. It's a very cool guy. His name is Dale Triplett. And, well, I'm going to shut up. And I'm going to introduce you to him. So, here he is.
Okay, gentlemen. I know you guys could talk all day, but we only have an hour. Okay?
Fair enough.
So take the conversation wherever you want to, but bring it back home in an hour, okay? Because we've got some other stuff going on this afternoon. Have fun.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Okay, first of all, it's not really an interview channel, but I do want to talk about Halcyon. So
cool.
I've got some very specific. I've got some questions that'll just come to me as we talk.
You're like, no.
And we'll go from there. Okay. So this is a gunslinger. I just read you his chapter in my autobiography. He is my editor. He is a writer, and he is insane. In a very cool way. So let's talk about Halcyon for a while. Halcyon feels like you were having some kind of conversation with yourself, or you were just trying to, well, yeah, okay, well, fine. Well, then I did this too. And you're like, well, I did this and I've been here. And you're like, oh yeah, well, I know these guys. And so
a buddy of mine in high school mentioned your review where you'd said that we're like, he was having this one-up-and conversation with himself. He says, I'm buying the book for this review alone.
Oh, that's cool. So put me put me in your headspace when you're working on Halcyon.
I had initially wrote it as a short story for obscure Australian science fiction magazine, Andromeda Space Flight magazine, and I got paid for the short story, which was always a plus. So it was cool to get my first check in Australian dollars. I think I made $50 for the deal. But that was in 2003, I think.
Okay.
And getting into advertising, marketing. I was out in Phoenix, and the recession hit. Everything, economy just went belly up. And
yeah,
my ex-wife, she says, "Why don't you just take advantage of this time and write?" And
yeah.
so it was actually Johnny's idea to take Halcyon and expand it into a full element. And I thought a trilogy just always seemed to suit me, that maybe I could focus and break it up into 3 different parts. I still don't know how it's going to end, although I have started on book 3 now.
Okay.
Did some writing yesterday, and just my lifelong fascination with everything related to UFOs. And it's like, okay, take everything that we've learned since the 40s and supposed on, and what about some of the more popular myths and some of the other things that are actually true. So that led to to the development of the whole story. And I was in Sedona for 2012, where most of that year is where I wrote the lion's share of the first book.
Okay.
And really just kind of, that place was really well suited for creativity.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you say that?
Sedona is just friggin' awesome, you know.
I've never been.
Oh, dude, you missed out when that's your next trip to Arizona. Do that. You will have to put Sedona on a bucket.
All right, cool.
You will not be disappointed.
All right, cool.
You will want to move there.
Yeah, well, it is in Arizona, and I do sweat a lot, so.
Usually
Okay,
about 10 or 20 degrees cooler than Phoenix, so it's worth it.
So I was telling everybody before you got on here, so you worked really hard on the Madness Wars, and it's coming to a close April 15th. So I was hoping that we could get together maybe in like in my garage and do a little social distance scotch night. Maybe get some cigars.
I'm totally in.
Would that be cool?
Twist my arm, wife. Yes, it would.
Yeah, that would be cool. It would be like release day, and you know, the three of us. The wife will be there too, and we can just drink some scotch and
release day,
smoke some
day,
cigars on release day.
Around.
That sound good?
That sounds great.
Okay, tell me about the jacket.
It's my air crew jacket. Alcoholics Moving Cargo or Air Mobility Command, whichever you prefer. I was a load master in the Air Force. Okay. 4 years in the Marine, 4 years in the Air Force.
Okay.
And this is my coolest fancy. It's a little brisk out here. It's still beautiful on the lake today. Spring is upon us.
Okay, tell us where you are. If you're gonna show us a scenic view, you have to tell us where you are.
Down at Hawks Point in Kimberling City on Table Rock Lake.
Table Rock Lake. I have never been. I've lived in Missouri since I was 13, with the exception of 5 years when I was living in Milwaukee, and I have never been to Table Rock Lake. I've lived in Springfield 15 of those years and have never been to Table Rock Lake. And I'm seeing it right there. Oh, you got a little guy with you. Who's that?
Rango. That's
Rango. Okay. Well, he's cool.
Remember him from Phoenix?
Yeah, I remember.
He loves it out here. He lives to fix the deer and the squirrels, and him and the fox are pretty good buddies.
Cool. Cool.
Actually, I actually saw him playing with a fox. He'll chase him and just moo and really going like a hound treeing a coon. But then they get together, they actually play. And
I didn't hear that.
Really
what was that? Yeah, what
song
does the dog make? What song? I'm sorry, I'm not catching it.
Yeah, you heard it.
All right. So you said something a minute ago. And I'm not gonna let you pass it by. You said what you've learned in 40 years. We were talking about the book, and you mentioned UFOs and what you learned in 40 years. So, like,
yeah,
that sounds like 40 years of pretty intense, like, studying. So, like, what books are you reading about that? Where have you been? Who have you talked to?
Everything is that I had my first sighting of something I couldn't explain whenever I was just a kid. I was about 4 or 5, living in Texas. Dad was stationed at Dyess Air Force Base in Abilene, and just playing in the backyard, I remember looking up and seeing this triangle that was kind of a tangerine creamsicle color, and it was not a cloud. It wasn't a cloud in the sky, and I just remember distinctly going, "What is that?" And that was back in the days of In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy hoisting. I just got into the whole Easter Island thing, and even Eric von Daniken, I always think is full of shit now, but there was a lot of just anything that we didn't know the answer to always piqued my interest. I think that's one of the greatest answers to any question is we don't know.
Yeah.
I've always just liked the time I've spent in the military and later in life, some of the experiences I've gone through. That's kind of the odd thing about Halcyon, believe it or not. Had some people contact me wondering if I was a participant in the secret space program, because the allusions that I make to a lot of the characters that are in the tale really resonate with these people. Like, dude, you had to have been an experiencer.
Yeah.
A part of me actually believes that, believe it or not. I had some missing time in the Marine Corps that still puzzles me, and I genuinely wonder about what happened. And talking with another guy who has more of a recall, he remembered what happened during that missing time.
Yeah.
I'd gone in for a session of special testing, and I can remember when I took the ASVAB the first time in high school, the first time I took the ACT, and I could probably even pull up a few specific questions. But when I went in for that special testing in the Marine Corps, I have no.
Okay, you're
And then the next thing I know, I'm waking up in the middle of the afternoon and very disillusioned and not knowing what was up. It was really creepy.
yeah.
There
Okay.
are a lot of weird stuff out there, brother.
All right, I see the cup. The cup is cool that you just drank out of. That's very cool. That's very cool. What are you drinking?
Cool guy, you know that, Jeff.
Be honest. What are you drinking?
Very nice coffee.
Okay.
I did an interview just 3 days ago. I did a Zoom interview with a buddy up in Alaska, and I was tanked for the whole interview. I watched it back and was like, oh, okay. Wow. Only repeated myself like a dozen times. That's all.
Oh, that's great.
So I was like, nah, I'll stick to coffee when I'm talking to you.
All right. Well, Becca's in the room, and I know how much she scares you, and if we both got drunk on here, and
she had a real big help with the second book that's coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, she's your editor.
Yes, she is, and she will be the editor for the third.
Yeah.
So her input was absolutely invaluable.
How brutal was it? How bloody?
Not bad.
No?
Some only got in the fetal position like twice, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay. And she hurt your feelings.
I'm not worthy.
And she hurt your feelings a lot.
Not at all, actually. And I tend to cling to my words. I know you do as well.
Yeah.
I don't make a lot of changes to your work, and then the fun part is my ability to still grasp the whole world.
Yeah.
And to be able to tap into where these characters are, and I'll question things character-wise every now and then. That doesn't seem like something they would do, but I don't think I've hurt your feelings too many times.
Oh no. I had this experience.
Screw him.
Well, I had this experience where I sent a book early on to an editor that I thought was ready, that was very not ready. Hadn't learned how to revise or anything like that. I sent it to this woman, and she was pretty big professional, works with a lot of traditional authors and stuff like that. And I sent it to her, and when I got it back, I was embarrassed. I mean, she was supposed to get it to me in a month, and it took 5. And I was like, okay, the whole time I'm real pissed. But when I got it back, I realized that the reason she took so long is because she had to take so many breaks, because it was such an atrocious draft. You can only edit really bad work for so long before it just starts to gnaw on your soul. And so she had to put it down so many times. It was just a really bad draft. And afterwards, I was embarrassed after I looked at it. And that's when I realized, I was like,
I'm just not a good enough writer. Good storyteller, not a good enough writer. And so what I did was I just set the book aside. I didn't touch it. And I started writing other books. And I was just like, once I teach myself how to do this, then I'll come back and do the rewrite. So I worked for about 3 years writing book after book after book after book after book after book, and then just setting them aside because I knew they weren't good enough yet. Just setting them aside. And then once I figured out that I knew what I was doing, I went back, and it was such a terrible draft that what I did was I would read the chapter and then close the document, open up a blank page, and rewrite the whole thing. And I did that with 2 books. I did that with Leafdom and Chased. I didn't try to cut and paste and shift and all that kind of stuff. I just started at a blank document because the drafts that I had were so completely out of hand. Leafdom was terrible. Chase was worse because Chase was my first book. And I wrote that book as if I was only writing one book. There was so many backstory and so many tangents and all this kind of stuff. You're gonna love this. I wrote the book, and the first draft of the book was 776 pages long. Okay. Now you're not thinking much of that because you just finished with the Madness Wars. The final draft that I published was 328. So I chopped 450 pages out of that book, and you don't even notice. And I've got a friend who read it back when it was a thing, back before I rewrote it. I sent it to her. She loves that draft. That draft is her favorite book, and she's read that draft like 8 times. Of course,
Wow.
I changed a bunch of stuff, and I pulled out a bunch of stuff. There's races in that draft that aren't in my books anymore. There's storylines that don't exist, towns that don't exist, wars that never happened, all this kind of stuff. So she has this one, and I let her keep the draft. She has this one draft of this one book where it's got stuff in it that doesn't exist anymore. So she has like this weird, like kind of chrysalis thing that is very dear to her, and she reads it all the time. She still reads it. So
I don't want to read it. It would absolutely screw up my perception of the rest of the world.
yeah, it really would.
It's hard enough to keep track of as it is.
It would mess with your whole viewpoint. I got to keep you pure.
Yeah, that's right. Untainted.
So every time we talk about my work, you end up saying the same thing. You call yourself my scribe, which, you know, is completely accurate. But the one that always gets me right in the feels is when you call yourself a man of the mountain.
I feel that. I really do. That's where I can get into the element. It's like, okay, that's my favorite part of the whole world.
Yeah.
Is everything associated with the mountain and the people there and the clans there and just the tradition, the depth, it's just, I really appreciate it. And I feel like I've contributed to actually making the stories a little better, you know, as good as it possibly can be. And that's why I proudly call myself a man of the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. You got
the old guy drinking scotch up in a cave, scribbling away.
You got in touch with me after you finished editing Legends of Exiles, Legends of the Exiles. You got in touch with me and you're like, I want to move to the mountain. You're like, I want to move there. I want to move to the mountain. You said, I want to be a stone fist. I'm a stone fist. And I was thinking about that. Like, I was thinking about that a lot. And you picked the right family. You picked the right clan. Of the 7, you have the attributes of a stone fist in everything that I've seen. So,
Jordan, I like it, man.
yeah. So, okay. So, so there are, you did this thing in Halcyon that just blew my mind. And I never really thought about it before, but it's totally a thing. You have Sasquatch in that book.
Tsunaki.
Right. You have Sasquatch in that book. But I've always seen that creature as a solitary creature. But you have like an army of them. And that scares the fuck out of me.
They're badass army. You don't want to screw with Rizok, Kurtz, Taka, Strategos, Andrex. Those. I think I said it in one book. You know, they would make Klingons cry.
Yeah,
you know?
I never even thought about it.
Tremble in fear.
I never even thought about it before, but like a charge of those things, you get like 15,000 of them. And, you know, we know they're massive. We know they're muscular. We know they're powerful. We know, and they're just like, I mean, that would scare the fuck out of anybody. And then you put them on mounts. Tell us about your mounts.
Kennewack that I used in more in the first book. And had to have Bigfoot on a big ass horse, you know. it's like Clydesdales with pretty hair, you know.
Yeah, they have really long hair, and you like, if I remember correctly, and it's been a while since I've read it, but they shear the hair and they shave the hair on these very big, massive.
In the book, yeah, they're freaking the guy out that owns them, because they used to be war mounts, and that was actually something I'm kind of proud of. I brought the Tsunaki that had been away from the others for 26,000 years.
Yeah.
And then they come and meet the other Tsunaki, and it kind of, in a way, helped lend credence to the believability whenever the old ones are doubting the ways of the new, and it made you say, oh, okay, well, if these old guys believe them, and then the old guys are doing this, then they must be real.
Yeah.
You know, just for that suspension of belief long enough to make you swallow it, and like I said, just that continue on down the rabbit hole. And I kept on feeding just a little bit more, because it starts in the here and now, where everything is real and just as it is like here, and then it gets freaking crazy fast. But
it does.
But well,
everything's cool, and you've got like this very realistic description of how the space shuttle works and the chain of command, and you've got, you know, your politicians, and you've got all that drama, and then like in a split second shit gets weird, and you're like, whoa, okay, all right, different kind of book than I thought, because I was expecting some kind of like, well, I was expecting what you get, right? So you get Earth has been destroyed, a few people made it off. So when I first approached Halcyon, I'm like, okay, so this meteor destroys the world. These guys get off. They've got all these supplies. They got all these things. Only a few people made it. And they're going to find some kind of planet. And, you know, I expected like a discovery and a conquest of a foreign planet, because that's the direction it's going. That's what you think. That's where you think you're going. You got us all. You tricked us all real good. That's where you think we're going. And I'm like, okay,
Aha!
we're gonna discover this, or maybe we'll end up like a back in times kind of apes thing, or something like that. And so I was just like, okay, all right. And then boom, shit goes on, and you're like, what the fuck am I reading? What the fuck am I reading? And I sat back as soon as the thing hit. As soon as the first, we get the response from the meteor. As soon as it happened, I was like, okay. So I put the book down, and I got up and I went and got a beer because I was drinking a lot of beer. I like cheap beer, so I was drinking like Miller High Life and Pabst. There's nothing wrong with Pabst.
Nothing wrong with Pabst.
So I go on to grab a Pabst, and I'm gonna like sip on it and go back to reading. And I end up sitting there quietly in my office, and I drank an entire Pabst Blue Ribbon. And then I remembered, okay, I got to go back. Like, it was supposed to be just a beverage that I have while I read. But what it turned into was like a gathering myself and putting myself back together to step back into the book, And we had actually made plans to get together like 2 weeks later. Like when we first, okay, so we were in Spiffbo together, and everybody starts socializing, and then you find out that I'm right down the road, and you start looking into you see my Harley, and you see, you're just like, I want to meet this guy. So we decided we're going to get together. We're actually going to get together right where you're sitting, right on that porch.
Exactly.
And so in 2 weeks, I'm super excited about it. So I want to read your book so that we can talk about it. And so I drank the whole beer, and I picked up my Kindle knowing that by the time I was done reading this book, I was going to have to talk to the guy that wrote it. And so
it scared you.
And so I went back into it, and like, I'm telling you, if I stopped every time to take a breath and and have a pause and drink a Pabst every time that book went into another gear, I would have been drunk by page 300, by page 120. Seriously, I ended up reading the whole thing.
I'm not as prolific as you are.
Well, I ended up reading the whole thing in one night, which I don't usually do that. I ended up reading the whole thing in one night, and it was just really, I mean, just something you never expect, you never look for. So
pacing, I tried to keep it like a comic book. I wanted that feel of the bam, zoom, pow, and just keep it going, keep the action going. It's maintain a story, maintain a plausibility, maintain a suspension of belief, and slowly lean to these elements. And the three titles are Faith, Love, and Trust. That's the three books in the series.
Yeah.
And by themselves, when you think halcyon, faith, love, trust, has absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with the content until it's all digested and you start to realize how these elements play in building a civilization from where it's crashed and reconstructing it on more positive stuff, trying to be a little bit optimistic, I guess, but still realistic. It did get a little dark in some sections of the book that actually bothered some people.
It gets very dark.
Crucifixion.
But you locked up here.
Channeling my inner Stephen King on that one.
Yeah, it gets dark.
It was
you're locked up. You're making this.
That was a tough. And I really debated keeping it in there. I had debated on whether or not to even keep that in the book. I really had.
Okay, you're back. Now, what did you debate on keeping in the book? Because I think you cut out.
that section on the crucifixion, the real grim scene with the mother and
Okay.
daughter.
Yeah.
It was I'd had a couple of readers, friend from high school. She's like, Dale, you're a nice guy. How could you write that horrible thing?
I'll never understand.
She doesn't know Gart cock.
Okay, you can't say that and not explain that.
I'm not going there. They'll need to read the books, and they already have.
Read the Madness Wars, and you'll understand what he's talking about. Yeah, that's
Garks are terrible. They're like the Tanaki to me. That's who I relate the Tanaki to.
yeah.
Is
Garks.
very much so.
Garks are pretty intense. So I'll give a little bit of a view of what's going on, what's coming next, or not next, but what's coming in the future. So, in Onslaught of Madness, you have the explosion of the moon. Okay.
Yep.
So the moons were formed during the God War, and the front lines crunched together so hard that 7 different war gods on one side and 7 different war gods on the other came together and hit their nemesis so hard they instantly died and their bodies fused together.
Right.
So you've got these corpses of these gods, and then they just kind of roll around the atmosphere and all of their limbs rolled off, and that's how the moon's formed. So inside is the moon's comprised of 2 dead gods. In Onslaught, when the moon explodes, one of those gods is set free. Then his soul comes down and lands in the Gark land in I think 5 different children that were being born at that moment. So these are the books I'm writing now, and that god raises up an army to try to take over the world. 15 years later, the moon explodes again, and his nemesis comes down to raise up an army to fight him. Okay, so basically you have these 5 Gark children that were all born at the exact moment of the escape, is what I call it. When the moon explodes, the escape. So one of them is called Moonbroke. And then you've got Moonbroke the Dead. And that is a baby that was stillborn that has some of the god's soul in it. He's stillborn, but he's alive. So it's Moonbroke the Dead.
Here's a funny side note before you say that. I've always regarded the escape from the first book I edited, when all those crazy bastards escaped out of that prison.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I get a lot of that.
And it's like, oh, okay, I'm the editor, I should know better. It's like, oh, okay, the escape is the moon now. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah. Well, if you go back to when they escaped, if you read the song and you go back to when they escaped, they actually escaped. What the prison Mending Keep was broken into.
Mending Keep, right.
A year after the escape. So the moon exploded, and a year later, then. So yeah. So I get a lot of that. I get a lot of the prison break was the escape, but it wasn't. So you've got
really good to know.
So you've got Moonbroke, you've got Moonbroke the Dead, you've got Moonbroke the Cut, and Moonbroke the Cut was cut out of the mother's womb because she was so startled by the explosion that she died. And then there's Moonbroke, I forget, there's all these Moonbrokes, and the main character goes around and kills all of them and devours their heart, and then takes all the power of the god. And he's a Gark. So you've got this Gark that just like starts building and building and building power. So that's what's going on. That's what's coming up. So the Gark actually play a very big role in the stuff that's coming up. They're like, so I'm gonna go ahead and describe them. The Gark are very big. They're like 9 feet tall. They weigh like 400 pounds. They're covered in fur, but they have hair like normal people, but they're covered in fur. And the one that you know the best is Booth.
Boots is one of my favorite characters you wrote.
Yeah, Booth. You know Booth, and he has gray fur and black hair. But it gets really crazy. Like there's one who it's a shaman, and I can't remember what it's the character's called. Because the Gark are like a jungle people. I can't remember what the character is called, but
that's the one we just went through.
It has it has orange, black, and white stripes on its fur.
Right. He's the one that's coming to get the Hoodsman or the Klansman. That's
yeah, that's one of them. Yeah. So
no spoilers. I can't say what happens to him.
You didn't say what happened. They are coming for the Calden Collective.
Nothing.
They are coming for the Calden Collective. Rexter has to have an answer for the Calden Collective.
Yep, Calden. And those guys are great. Oh, that's been some of the best stuff you've written.
The Calden Collective stuff?
Yeah. I think that's been like the most refreshing element of what I've edited for you lately. And that's the tone of the characters. They're almost a bit more modern than a lot of their peers.
Right.
And they're earning their stripes, you know, and paying their dues. And I've just really, that's been a really fun part of the book and of the world.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed that.
Well, they just clicked instantly. The moment Ithrin helped Gale out of that sticky situation in the beginning, they were just best friends. And then he introduced them to his brother, and then they all became best friends. And then and then one of them falls in love with the nanny, and she's so much more than just a nanny.
Oh yeah.
And what I wanted to do with the Calden Collective was something I'd never seen done before. When it came to wizards in a fantasy world, I wanted to create one group of wizards that all had their own specialty, and they taught each other those specialties. And no one was asked to step outside of it. And there was no master, and there was no leader. So we've got Gale, and he's the writer.
Right.
So he's always constantly writing new spells. And if you go to Crown, he's in Crown.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where basically the wizards of the world have caught on the Calden Collective is way too powerful already. And they're doing stuff we've never seen before. And the rest of the wizard world starts to get scared. So they all show up at the college to what they say audit the collection, the guys, the six.
I remember that. Yeah.
They're going to audit the 6 of them, and they're going to assign them a master, and they're going to go through their arsenal and check and make sure that some of these really important, powerful items they have are in the right hands, because they're too young of wizards to know how to wield that kind of power. And they're going to take some of those books out of there, because you can't have that many books in one place. And basically all these wizards show up to just take over and loot what the Cauldron Collective has built. So anyway, I wanted to create a wizarding group that there was no leader, but they all had their specialty. Gail was a writer. Quill, she was a cartographer before she got into wizardry. And you find out more about that in further books. You find out what her actual name is, you find out who she used to travel with and who raised her and all that kind of stuff. But basically it's a wandering map maker. And so she was into maps, so she started doing like location stuff, and she created that big glistening table that pulls up maps of everything and all this kind of stuff. And she focuses on location. And then you've got Thrak, he's the librarian and the thug. He's the most well-read of all of them.
His knowledge is impressive. It really is. It's cool how you've written that too, and it comes across. It's like, yeah, I read it somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah. There's a point where I think it's in Plight. They've been called before like the leader of the Wizarding Center, and they look up there, and it's Galen, Ithrin, and Thrak, and they see a half dragon. And so they fly off with the half dragon. The half dragon wants to talk to him by himself, and he goes, "Do you know who I am?" And Gale says, "No." And Ithrin says, "No." And Thrak says, "Sure." Because he's read all the books. So the most well-read librarian of the group is also the gladiator. So his specialty is dueling. So he teaches them all how to fight. And then Ithrin is a writer, and he creates their mounts, and he put all that work into Baby. And you know, he creates their mounts, and he's about movement. He's about, you know, getting places and doing things. But the idea was, you don't have to be ancient and steeped in knowledge to be a powerful wizard or wizardess. All you need is to be creative. You know what I'm saying? Just be creative. There's a scene where they come up against Rexter, and they can't kill him. They know they can't kill him. So one of them casts a labor spell on him. It's a manual labor spell. You use it to pick this heavy thing up and move it over here. But what they use instead is they use it to lift him right off his feet and then just leave him there. So he can't swing a sword, and he can't get his feet under him or anything like that. He's just hovering in the air. Well, it's a completely creative way to use that spell. And only the Cauldron Collective would have thought of that. Just lift them up with a move.
Silicon Valley, or the Silicon Valley Wizards.
Yeah, basically, yeah. That's a good way to put it. And then while they had him up in the air, Gale pulls his weapon, which is that rod, and blasts him with a bolt of lightning while he's hovering in the air, and he just goes sailing across the city. And then they took off. But that's what they do. They come up with creative solutions. And it's about the mind being nimble instead of having memorized all the spells and having the histories on the traditions and all that kind of stuff that these covens of wizards are normally tied to. You have 4, and then by the time they get to Crown 6, wizards that are just like, well, how can we do it differently than it's ever been done before? It's like the Bruce Lee thing, right?
Right.
Bruce Lee knew this style, but he also knew that there was a lot of extra movement that you could just pull all that out, and he made a tighter style that was just, you know. So that's what I was thinking with the Calling Collective. I wanted to get away from the old ancient wizard with the wizarding tower and the apprentices and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to just get with a bunch of creative minds that are just like solving problems in different ways.
You must become like water.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's what happened with the Calling Collective, and I'm really enjoying them.
They're a great addition to the world.
I'm in the second act now, so I'm writing book 35, and they're all the way through it, and they're everywhere in there.
That's cool.
Yeah. There is there's a section in the book, Scorch, which is the next book I'll be sending him. There's a section in the book Scorch where this completely evil woman is just breaking the soul of this conquered city. And they're really into history, and she burns the church of the god of history. And it also happens to be this huge library. And so she sets the library on fire. And as the fires are starting to grow, 4 figures drop down right on the front stairs, and it's the Calling Collective.
Cool.
And they're like, we're gonna leave you alone because we've got books to save, but fuck you, and I'll be looking for you. You know. So they end up taking that entire library of the history god and putting it in the college. You know.
Oh, cool.
So
really piss the wizards off even more.
Yeah.
You have too many books.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, why do we fear in fantasy? Why do we fear the ancient wizard instead of the wizard that thinks out of the box? You know what I'm saying?
It's always the innovator. It's the David versus Goliath element.
Yeah.
That triumphs a lot of times. You know, it's the unlikely hero, but it's because of innovation.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was the direction I was going with that.
And it worked really well. And a great counterpart to the Hoodsman. And so
yeah.
I can't go to where I wanted to talk about. I was like, no, I can't say that. Can't say that, because it was like, wow, that was really, really cool at the end. I was like, yeah. people are gonna dig. They're going to absolutely flip at the next book.
Yeah, you think?
And how that? Oh yeah, their fans look forward to this. You're going to dig it.
Yeah. The Madness Horse. See, what I did was, I had written so many books in so many different series. I started so many different series, but I hadn't released any yet. And I was still releasing the standalones, Lethem, Chased, Messelman. I was still releasing the standalones. And I found myself in this situation. All the books were leading to this one big climax in the book 25. And I found myself in this position where I had written 2 books of this trilogy, 2 books of this trilogy, 2 books of this trilogy, 3 books of this quartet, 3 books of this, and 5 books of the 7 series. And then I had a year, and I was going to be finishing all 5 series all in a row, like one right after the next, right after the next, you know. And this is the end of the first act, so I had so much momentum going into it that it was almost impossible to slow down. So at one point, I just got to where I was writing constantly. I was writing all the time, and I was just like pounding out big numbers, huge numbers, just finishing out this series, finishing out this series, finishing out this series. And then I got to the Mountain series, and I had 5 epic length books written of the Mountain, and I had 2 more to write. And so me and Becca started at the first one, and we read all of them. Okay, so we read all 5, and it was like, I think like 5,700 pages or something. It was ridiculous. No, it was like it was 4,000. It was around 4,000 pages of just mountain stuff, right? So I'm getting back into the feel of the mountain, and then I started writing it, and I almost immediately started writing big numbers. I was writing all the time and everything, and I started losing it a little bit. So I'm
Not you.
I'm like 400 pages. I'm like 400 pages into a 750 book. 200 pages into a 750 book. And I'll be sitting in the room with Becca, and I'll be like, do you know where I put it? Do you know where I put it? I can't find it. I can't find it anywhere. I start looking around my desk. I'm checking my closet. I'm like, and she's like, what are you looking for? And I'm like, I've lost it. I can't find it. And I'm looking around all crazy, you know, and finally she'd calm me down, and it would pop up again like a day and a half, 2 days later. And I'd start looking for something that I couldn't name. And finally, she realized that what I was looking for was Peter Redfist. He wasn't in the 6th book, he was in the 7th book. And the 6th book, so much happens to the mountain where you need Peter.
You gotta have Peter.
That I had 500 more pages to write before we got to Peter, and Peter could start helping the mountain. I had 500 more pages to write, and so I just started writing as fast as I could. But I would like break down, and I'd be like searching all my desk drawers and like looking under things, and she'd be like, honey, it's okay, settle down, you're looking for Peter, you just have to keep writing, it's okay, take a breath. And so I had completely lost it. By the last day, I had 88 pages to write, and I wrote them all in 36 hours.
Wow.
And about 20 hours in, like I write with these 4 fingers and these 3 fingers, because I never properly learned how to type. So this pinky is curled up the entire time I'm working. So it started cramping really bad. It started cramping really bad, and it was really painful. So I just taped it. I took medical tape and I taped it to the finger next to it, and I just kept going. Because I had to finish the book.
Who says we're not jocks? We feel
Right.
pain as writers.
Right.
We know the pain.
So she was taught, yeah, I heard our dad was actually a football player in high school. She went over there and she started talking to him. I was working. I was sleeping. I think I was sleeping. She went over there and started talking to him. And she's like, yeah, he got about 20 hours into his 36-hour workday, and his fingers started cramping really bad. And her dad's like, he's got to tape it. He has to. And she goes, that's exactly what he did. So, I ended up finishing the book. I finished the entire first act. And by that time, I had developed this thing where when I talk, my fingers move like this because my fingers are typing everything that I say. So you probably have noticed that I do that sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
And I decided after writing the 25th book, I decided I needed a cool down book. There were some characters in the series that I never really got to explore, and I wanted to look at them. And so that's when I wrote Legend of the Exiles.
Which was good. Really, and it wasn't, yeah, definitely a cool down. And
It was a
just
cool down book.
More of a glimpse into some of the foundational elements of what makes these civilizations and separate. I really enjoyed Legend of the Exiles. That was a delight.
Yeah.
It was a beast. It was a lot. It was a delight.
It was intense. When I was done with Legends of Exiles, I wrote Legends of the Mountain, which was a bunch of short stories that like plugged a bunch of holes. And then I like sat back and I was like, I've written 4,100,000 words. Like, am I done? I think I might be done. Because this is a career, you know? And I was at the point where I could stop writing right then and still be publishing books for years. And like, maybe I could just stop. Maybe that was it. Maybe those 27 books, you know, if you got the 25 and then you've got Exiles and Mountain, maybe I could just stop right there. And I wouldn't have to write anymore, because I was really starting to lose it. When you write that many books and they're all in the same world and they're all crossing over each other, and something happens in this series that makes this series possible. And then this series it gets really crazy in your mind.
It's challenged me in not having that beautiful board behind you, and I will toot my own horn and say I'm proud as hell that I'm able to still process that and go, wait a minute, this happens over here. How that, you know, that just the contradictions, a little stuff that the nerds catch in movies. That's what I'm good at.
Yeah.
And that's why I've enjoyed, I think, more than anything, being your editor, is it challenges me to keep myself immersed in the world.
Yeah.
And to be, I'm like, I'm more of a news anchor than a scribe, maybe. This is going on right now. And hey, just in from the mountain.
Well, okay, so I decided that I was going to keep the second act and the third act maybes. And I was going to write this one book called Heaven. And in this one book, I was going to describe what was happening in heaven during the moment of the escape. Because what happens is the moon breaks and shards of the moon go shooting, and one of the shards of the moon shoots right through the streets of the city, the main city of heaven. It busts right through the streets and collides with one of the gods' castles. And now you've got this massive hole in the streets of heaven, and things are collapsing in there. A riot breaks out in heaven,
in the main city of heaven, this big riot breaks out, and the people who died and are now in their place of rest have to put together a crew to basically save heaven. Because
there's lots of Marines there. It's all good. They got it.
you just need like how many you say?
2 or
12?
3.
2 or 3. Okay.
That's the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps hymn. If the Army and the Navy ever glimpse on heaven's scene, they will find the streets are guarded by United States Marines.
So basically that's when I learned that in the God War that happens way earlier, in the God War, by the end of the God War, the gods had beaten themselves to the point where all of the gods in my world right now are suffering from PTSD from having survived such a bloody and terrible war. And that's why you have them doing such crazy things. And when I realized that my gods were suffering from PTSD, I decided that I needed to do the second act. I needed to do the third act because I needed to figure out what happens with these gods, you know. Because during the God War, there were gods raining into the sky, falling to the sky from the sky like meteors, blazing when they hit the atmosphere and colliding with the earth and exploding and all this kind of stuff. It was the people who were alive during the God War were like freaking out. It was a mess. So I figured out at first it was, I have to see Peter. I have to see what comes of Aaron. I have to see what comes of Jordan. I have to see what comes of this stuff and the story that goes all the way through it. But after I wrote Heaven, I realized I have to see my gods through it. You know, I need to finish the story so that I can bring rest to the gods that are in this world. So anyway, I think our hour is up.
Yeah, we have like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Have you read book 2 on Halcyon yet? Did you read book 2?
Not yet. I've been having a lot of really intense family emotional issues, and like something came up about 2 months ago. I've been talking about it a lot in my channel, where I realized that the guy I was told was my father all my life might not be my father. And so I'm having DNA tests and all that stuff done the last couple of weeks. And so things really came to a head like the day you got in touch with me for reading the books.
My timing's always immaculate.
So I'm trying to kind of set all that aside so that I can get to, but I will be reading those books before they come out. I will give you time to make any of your changes. You have my word.
Cool.
I just need.
I want a blurb from you too.
I will. I'll give you a blurb.
Cool.
I've already kind of got an idea of what it'll be. It'll be like, holy fuck, man! Seriously? By Jesse Teller, author of The Madness Force. That's the blurb.
I think that's what Dirk is going to say.
Yeah, that's the blurb.
That's
holy fuck, man! Seriously? Okay. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for being out here with me.
Enjoyed visiting with you today, brother.
Tell
the boys I said hey.
Release day. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna spend a little bit of money to get that scotch, and we're gonna sit down, smoke a cigar.
I'll bring a
celebrate
jug.
The Madness Wars because we both worked really hard on it.
Yes, you intensely, but I just got to enjoy it. Fix little shit.
All right. All right,
Have a
brother.
great afternoon, my friend.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye, back up.
Okay. Well, that was the Gunslinger. I think you could see that he's a pretty cool guy. It's very easy to talk to, very down to earth, but absolutely insane at the same time. Anyway, like everybody I've had on here, everybody I will have on here, he's extremely unique person. Okay. So Gondik Iron Spine. Just to catch you up in case you haven't. In case it's been a while, I wrote a book called The First Tree. Won't be coming out for a while. Probably a year and a half. In it, there's a character who is born a slave. And we find out that his father was a gladiator, and that all the men peppered through his life were friends of his father. When his mother sold him into slavery, they couldn't afford to bring him out. They couldn't afford to buy him. So they entered the lives of the people around him so that they could keep him safe. When he got old enough, he was told, and he went to his father's grave, and he's standing in front of his father's grave, and he says, "I'm here. I made it this far. I don't know what you want from me. I don't know where to go from here. Give me something, tell me something." Well, in the book, somebody shows up. Somebody shows up and tells him about his father. And the guy's name is Beck. And Beck shows up and tells him all about his father and what his father was doing in the quest that his father failed at. And he goes out to finish the quest. Anyway, a couple months ago, I was doing the editing for that book. I like to edit entire series before any of it comes out. This is the second book of that series, so I was editing that book, and I was talking to my wife about it afterwards. I was really upset, and I was talking about that scene. I was crying, and I could barely stand up. I could barely keep myself going, and she finally says, "We need to talk." She comes up with this theory that a character that I mentioned in my books called Bramble is actually my father, and not Char, the guy I was raised to believe is my father. So for the last, I think that was the 4th video. So for the last 8 videos, I've been giving updates on how the saga is progressing and what we've been finding out and this kind of thing. There's been a lot of questions, not a lot of answers. And I've been waiting for a DNA test to come back from Ancestry.com and give me some kind of closure. Answer the question that's hanging above me and tell me what I need to know. So this is going to be an update on that. Well, a couple days ago, it came in, I guess it was Sunday, the news came in that the DNA sample that I sent, which is, they went in saliva. The DNA sample that I sent was contaminated, and they weren't able to get enough of a sample to compare it. I had waited for 7 weeks at this point, not including the week that it took for the kit to get to us. So that's 8. And as you probably know, and it's probably maybe even some of you are devastated. The answer was not right there. It was waiting. They offered to send me a free kit to do the sample again. But after that, it's going to be another 8 weeks. And that's after it gets mailed to them. I mean, after they get it and process it, it'll be 8 weeks from then. You know, it's possible to come back sooner, but not probable. We decided to also go through a site called 23andMe, which does exactly the same thing. And we'll see who gets to us first. So basically, it's pretty devastating. And for a couple of days, I was just trying to keep myself together. But basically, my wife, she sat me down and she's like, listen, we've been in a holding pattern all this time, and you've been just kind of spinning your wheels and bumping up against walls and slamming your head against walls, waiting for this to come in, and we can't do that. We got to do something. You can't just put everything on pause for another 2 months. So the plan was always to buy a treadmill. We went out and bought a treadmill. So I'm going to start exercising. And that'll get me through some of it. But we needed to move forward. So I guess it was Tuesday? Was it Tuesday or Wednesday?
I think it was Tuesday morning when you talked to Sly.
No, but
It was Monday night whenever you made the other call.
okay. So Monday night, I took some information that was given to me by Tacy. You may remember that name. She's the one who's been doing research. She's a nonfiction writer, and she's good at research. She was doing research into my family, and she ended up getting me the number for 2 landlines. One was Bramble himself, and the other one was for a man that's called Uncle Sly, who is a really good friend of the family, and he's part of my uncle's old crew. Uncle Wrath was friends with Bramble. They were really close friends, and Sly was in that group. So I ended up calling both numbers. When I called Uncle Sly's number, I got a answering machine. And Bramble is supposedly dead, but we couldn't find any proof of that. There was no obituary. There was no death notice anywhere that we could find. So that question's been hanging over our head. Well, the second number I called was Bramble's line. And I was very careful about how I went about this conversation. I said, hello, this is Jesse Teller, but I used the name that I used before I changed my name. The name I was given and had for 28 years of my life. I said, this is Jesse Teller. I'm wondering if there's anybody at this number that recognizes that name. If there's anybody who knows a Jesse Teller, call me back at, and before I could give the number, a woman picked up. I said, hi. And she's like, yeah, what do you need? And I said, do you recognize the name Jesse Teller? And she said, no. I said, okay. I said, well, I'm calling because I have some questions that I need answered. And this is one of the places that I need questions answered from. And she said, well, I'm sorry, I don't know the name. I said, do you know the name Bramble? Of course, saying his real name instead of the code name. And she says, yeah, that was my husband. He passed away. And I said, I'm sorry for bringing that heartbreak to you today and for mentioning him today. And she goes, no, honey, it's okay. He was in the nursing home for 2 years before he passed away. It was a mercy. So, she said she didn't put any notice in the paper of his passing, and she didn't let anybody know. So what we know for sure is that Bramble is dead. Even though we can't find an obituary for him or anything like that, we know that he has passed away. So, I talked to her for a little bit longer. And when I was leaving, I said, well, I'm Uncle Rath's son. I'm Uncle Rath's nephew. Do you know that name? And she said, I've heard it before, but I don't know it. This leads me to believe that Bramble and Rath were not close towards the end, which means it's possible that they may have separated from each other because of this whole thing. That's possible. I'm guessing at other people's stories when I say that, and I don't like to do that, but it is possible. So, I'm on a 48-hour schedule. So that night, Becca went to bed. I stayed up all night, and at 9, probably 05, the next morning, I get a call from Uncle Sly. Now, I actually called him Uncle, even though he's just a friend of the family. I called him Uncle because that's what I've always called him. And he's always been good to me, and even though I'm 45, and I was told to call him that at birth, to me, he'll always be Uncle Sly. So I called him Uncle Sly, and I gave him the name, and he didn't recognize the name. He said he had to listen to the message over and over and over again to try to figure out who I was, and then he figured it out, and he called me. He's like, so what's going on? So I tell him my theory, and I started off by saying, 2 people that used to hang out with you have mentioned to me that it might be a good idea for me to get a DNA test to find out who my father is. And he said, I thought your father was always Char. And I said, yeah. So that's what I thought too. He goes, who are you thinking your father really is? And I said, Bramble. And he was like, oh. I said, well, I never heard anything about that. And I was like, okay. Well, there's a lot of things that aren't adding up about my past that are only answered if this is true. And he said, okay. So I started giving him all my evidence. I started laying it all out in front of him. The day I was born, how I was born early, but I was still huge. The fact that genetically I don't match with anybody in my family. I mentioned that I had balded early, and he was like, well, Bramble also balded early. I mentioned that my body reacts differently to exercise. That when I start exercising, I see results faster than anybody else that's ever been in my family at all. And he said, well, Bramble was always very athletic. I mentioned that I looked like Thistle, Bramble's older brother, and he says, "Yeah, my hair color doesn't match anybody in my family on either side." He said, "Yeah, you have the same color hair as Bramble." I went through all of the evidence with him, and he laid it all out. He was like, "Yeah, all of that is accurate." He goes, "I need you to get in touch with me when you find out, and let me know what happened." Then he started talking a little bit about him and Bramble. Friends since kindergarten. I had originally thought that my uncle's crew were friends from middle school on, but evidently that crew was friends from kindergarten on. Anyway, Bramble and Sly were friends since kindergarten. They were really close. And when Bramble went into the nursing home, every week Sly went and visited him. Those would have been very rough visits, from what I've heard. But Sly went and visited him every week. When he passed, Sly helped with all of the arrangements to get everything taken care of. And what I realized was that I was on the phone with Bramble's best friend. I can safely say that. So I also told them that he asked about my mother, and I told him that me and Rose do not talk and that we're not in each other's life. And he said, "Yeah, I was sending her Christmas cards and letters and all that stuff for years, and then she just stopped responding." He says, "I didn't know what I did, but she just stopped responding. She doesn't want to talk. She doesn't want me in her life." I said, "Yeah, that happens sometimes with her." I said, "I'm not in Uncle Rath's life either. That entire family has turned. He doesn't talk to me. Nobody in the family talks to me." And he goes, "Well, that's not true. I'm talking to you." So he let it be known that he is still wanting to be in my life. And that he will become an active part of my life either way. So I have Uncle Sly back. He's a lot of fun. It's impossible to be in a room with Uncle Sly and not be having a good time. He's a lot of fun. Am I forgetting anything?
The pool cue.
Oh yeah. I told him that when I was 4 and Bramble and Rose broke up, that Bramble gave me his pool cue. And Sly was like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah." I said he had a custom pool cue that screwed down into 5 pieces, and he gave it to me when I was 4. And he goes, "I remember that pool cue." He goes, "He loved that thing. That was like his baby." He goes, "He just gave that to you?" And I said, "Yeah." I was, "Oh man." So anyway, he verified that that was a big gift. He also said that in '72, Sly got married and he stopped hanging out with that crew as much. So he was only with them, he said, once every 3 months from that point on, because he was doing the family thing. I was born in '76. The affair would have been going on in '75. So at that point, he would have been seeing very little of Bramble or Rose. So that's also a reason why he's not. Now, we left it we left it on very good terms. I told him I'd call him back. Either way, I'm going to keep talking to this man and invite him to my house when the COVID thing is over, and we're going to be close. I want Sly back. Anyway, that's what I have for you. I made a lot of progress, even though I've suffered a major setback. So we're not going to know for a little bit longer. We won't find out this season. And I'll let you know when the information does come in. Anyway, that's my episode for today. Do all the things. And thank you for coming back to my office. I'll see you next week for the big season finale. I think you're going to enjoy that one. Bye.